But when you're not watching the Albion, you're doing some incredibly important work with the Samaritans.
Post-pandemic, I was looking for something, a project to do, something which gave something back to society, and also made a bit of a difference. I wanted to also go completely outside my comfort zone, and I think I've done that. I've taken calls from people significantly under 18, some calls from people significantly over 80, and everywhere in between. We take calls from around the country. But yeah, we do a lot of outreach work. So we do stuff with Pride, Trans Pride, schools, colleges, the travellers community. And what we're trying to do is actually get out in the community and make a difference.
So Dean, I've seen the look on your face today in quite a few people who walk into this training ground. It's a dazzling place, isn't it? What are your impressions?
It's so professional. It's a world away from the club that I initially supported, Paul. My first game was in 1973, in April 73, 2-2 draw against Nottingham Forest.
Well remembered.
And it's just, going from the Goldstone, having a season ticket at the Goldstone, Gillingham with Dean and then the Amex, it's incredible. As a bonus, I'll give you my first away game. It was 1st of January 1977, and it was Swindon. We were losing 4-0, and the game got abandoned after 67 minutes.
Handy.
Yes.
Why was it abandoned? Pitch invasion, possibly, in those days?
No, literally, because the pitch was unplayable. It was a glue pot. So
now you're going to expose my ignorance here. In 1973, your first home game, where was the training ground then? If there was a training ground,
I would imagine it was Hove Park. Certainly, we always used to train at Hove Park.
Across the road.
Yeah. That's
amazing. Just what sort of jumpers for goalposts, almost a little bit better than that, I imagine.
Not really. I mean, the club was short of cash, so and I think we were always in that place. So to see the transformation to the club to where we're at today, and this facility. And the level of people bouncing around in this facility, and you see the players walking past, and you see. So I was at Oxford last night, and you see Simas, who's going to be a superstar, by the way, phenomenal player.
So from 1973 to 1997, the Hereford game, you watched a club that wasn't struggling all the time. It did have some fun along the way, obviously. There were some highlights, but for the most part, you probably felt you were watching a club that wasn't really going to go very far in this world. Maybe a few spells in the top tier here and there, but you wouldn't have had huge ambitions for your team, would you?
The ambition for the club, certainly towards the end of that period you were talking about, was survival.
Yeah.
And simple as that. Football didn't tend to be a pursuit where you went to watch the football. You went to spend time with your mates before and after the game. And actually, the 90 minutes in the middle was the painful bit.
Yeah, I think we can all identify with that, actually. And so, I mean, you've seen so much Albion. I'm just trying to get that span into my head. But in all that time, who's been your favourite Albion player? I'm going to guess, correct me if I'm wrong, you'll either say Peter Ward or Mark Lawrenson.
Incorrect.
Ooh.
Wardy was an exceptional player, and I think Lawrenson is the best Albion player, pound for pound, certainly that I've ever seen, but not my favourite. I think a man of 60 having favourite footballers is a little bit sad, shall I say. I would say it, spanning back over the 53 years of being a fan, I don't really have a favourite, but if I had to, and you're pinning me down, it's either Dunkey, because he made the very most of his ability, phenomenal footballer and a local guy, or Pascal Gross, who made players better all around him. Exceptional footballer and exceptional guy. And also he got that thing with the fans. He got it.
Yeah. Yeah, the best player since Mark Lawrenson, for my money, certainly. But when you're not watching the Albion, you're doing some incredibly important work with the Samaritans, and now in the Premier League's suicide prevention project, launched on World Suicide Prevention Day. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the Premier League announced the pilot scheme a little while ago, and they asked clubs whether they wanted to participate. And there were three main planks of that. One was to reduce the stigma around suicide. Secondly was to raise the awareness of suicide. And also thirdly was to increase the ability for fans to actually reach out and have a conversation around suicide. I became involved with Samaritans 3 years ago. I was an insurance broker in the city, and post-pandemic, I was looking for something, a project to do, something which gave something back to society, and also made a bit of a difference. I wanted to also go completely outside my comfort zone, and I think I've done that. One of the things was that I wanted to also embed myself in a community where they were supportive. And the local branch of Samaritans, which I volunteer at, is Brighton Hove Albion District Samaritans. They're an incredible bunch of people. There's 220 of us, all volunteers. No one gets paid. We don't get any funds from Samaritans, so we're an affiliate branch, and it just feels very different that, I've taken some really difficult calls. I've taken calls from people significantly under 18, some calls from people significantly over 80, and everywhere in between. We take calls from around the country. But yeah, we do a lot of outreach work. So we do stuff with Pride, Trans Pride, schools, colleges, the travellers community. And what we're trying to do is actually get out in the community and make a difference.
How much training did you have to do to do that work? Because it's obviously a noble endeavour, but it's also a very difficult thing to do, and you need to know what you're doing when you're talking to people in those situations. So how long did you train to do that?
There was 6 weeks intensive training, and the thoroughness that we go into is at a different level. I've done a lot of professional training, obviously being 35 years an insurance broker. Yeah, I was well used to training. What we did at SAMS is just great, and actually provides a level of support, but also is something ongoing outside of that, and actually that goes into my private life, and actually I'd like to think has made me a different and better person.
Yeah, what has it taught you about sort of society and people? I know they're two very big questions. They're two slightly separate questions as well. But so in society, is it the case that there's a growing problem with suicide, or do we just know more about it now?
I think it's yes and yes, personally. I think there's a growing level of awareness around suicide and suicidal thoughts. But the need, once people accept they have that, where's the support? I don't want to make this a governmental thing, but lots of governments talk about changing the background to suicide and mental health. I don't think I've seen anything in the last 20 years.
Just going back to the football side of this, what can football's role in this be, and how would you use your knowledge and experience of football to connect it to this very worthwhile campaign?
You raise it by carrying to football by actually just raising the level of awareness. You have conversations. So we actually are there. We're going to be training 1,901 fans, a date that most fans will recognise. But actually, it's a broad consensus that we're looking to get to supporters groups, fan groups, the Albion community, corporate partners. It's everyone. So armed with that, there'll be training where people will be happy to have conversations. And alongside that, the Albion have also commissioned their own film via Samaritans, and also training material as well. So it will be Albion fans will be able to recognise it and see it for their own. It's their own club, which is great, and that level of attachment will be that much different. And also, Paul, I think what we've got is that on a match day, and I'm not sure any other club is going to be providing this, is emotional support at the ground. We've identified a space at the Imaging Centre on the East Concourse, which is accessible from the outside of the ground. And we'll be having volunteers, Samaritans volunteers there at every home game, from about 1.5 hours before the game to about an hour after the game. Initially, we'll be having a presence there all the way through, even on when the match is going on, because we just don't know.
Right. So that will be a desk or a place where people can go if they feel the urge, the need.
And it'll be Samaritans volunteers. It will be completely confidential. It'll be non-judgmental. It'll be a one-to-one conversation, but there'll be other people there, so it's a safe space for everybody.
Yeah, because I mean, one of the messages around this is obviously that it's good to talk, but there's another side to that, isn't there? It's good to listen. So for every talker, there has to be a listener.
Yes.
Which I suppose is what your work with Samaritans really is about, isn't it?
Yeah, the conversations aren't about us. They're about the people we listen to, because we don't offer advice. We just listen. Occasionally they'll want some practical help as to having support around a particular area. And yes, and we can help signpost, but it's about listening.
Yeah, because if you started offering advice to everybody and solutions, it's not doable in a telephone conversation, is it? I guess it's
really not. And one of the difficult things for me when I was transforming from being an insurance broker to being a Samaritan, my whole life was about problem solution. So actually taking myself out my comfort zone to going to being a Samaritan and actually not being able to have that part of the conversation was weirdly liberating. Actually, suddenly, because I don't know everyone's story. I can't possibly know. The calls, the longest call I've had is 2.5 hours, which is kind of crazy, really. And you have calls that last a minute or so, and everywhere in between. So I think where we're getting to is that whole process where, it is about talking and it's about listening equally.
And what's that done for you? I mean, in your life, I mean, presumably you feel very proud of the work you've done, but it's a lot to take on board, isn't it? So how do you manage that? How do you stop that, affecting you adversely or too adversely?
Firstly, we're encouraged any Samaritans type support required is done with a fellow Samaritan. So I've got a number of good friends and my mentor, who I'm particularly close to, that if I need to debrief, at the end of each session, we call them shifts, where we're listening, we debrief. And so we don't take anything outside of that centre. From time to time, calls will stay with you for obvious reasons. We're human. And certain calls, attach to us when we least expect it. But actually the key is that you don't dwell upon it. You don't Google people. You don't do that. What you do is you just talk it through, why it's important to you, and actually you make sense of that with the people that are around me to support me. So that's good. And also, so I don't burden family members with that, because that's the key really as well.
Yeah, I mean, football clubs are families in a way. They're a type of family, aren't they? So it's quite comforting to think of the football club being there for fans in that way. I mean, it's there for fans in lots and lots of ways, but that's the ultimate form of support for the people who go through the turnstiles, isn't it, really?
Completely. When I was saying before about football not being about football, it's always been about mates. It's always been about, I go to football with my brother and my mates, and that's my release. That's what we look forward to. So actually, and if I now need to have a bloke conversation with those friends, I'll do it. And I'm not afraid to do it either.
Do you think people around you, do you think people are getting better at those conversations? It'd be nice to think so.
It would be nice to think so.
Yeah.
I think, I don't want to generalise, but I'm going to generalise. men aren't good at talking.
No, I don't think many people would disagree with that.
But where we're at is that we look at, okay, armed with that Samaritans background, it's not being afraid to listen. So whatever comes out of people's mouths, being prepared for that. I have had mates open up to me about suicidal thoughts and their darkest moments. And that's in the last 3 years. So once they know I'm a Samaritan, my conversations often will change them. Yes, I still have the same inane football conversations with mates that I always will do. And we have the same, music conversation and the rest of it. Do we talk about emotions now? Yeah, we do. And that's encouraging.
Well, of course, the other great thing about football is that it's a place of escapism. I mean, people go to the ground to forget their troubles or suspend their troubles, don't they, for a while? And it works, doesn't it?
Yes.
Even if your team's losing 3-0, at least you're not thinking about the problems in your life. You're only thinking about the game in front of you and being there in the crowd, and something you might have been doing that for 50 years, as you have. So it's a wonderful place to go to, maybe just to feel a bit better for a while, isn't it?
Absolutely. And taking back into my world for a second, so... when I was going through a marriage breakup many years ago, the Albion was my release. And actually going to see mates and having that safe haven was great. And thankfully, that's all past us, and that's great. And now, my life is to some degree steady, but you're always aware of what may happen. Yeah,
it's funny that football and sport generally, it's kind of always there for you in some kind of strange way, isn't it? It's just, it turns up. It's got a fixture list. You can always go through those gates and
well, what was great,
lose
Paul,
yourself
completely. And what was great was actually going to the Oxford game last night, that knowing lots of guys that would be there and catching up with them. I was at Everton, so you generally meet up with the same people, but not always. And you see people fleetingly. And it's just great to make those connections. So, and having those inane football conversations is so brilliant.
What, you mean they're not profound football conversations?
What, as in who's my favourite Albion player of all time? That type of thing.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing. Yeah, well, we've got to sell the podcast, Dean. We always ask people for their favourite players. It's like a thing we've got. It's a nervous tick we have. Well, if anyone deserves... I'm going to ask you another one now, because if anyone deserves a trophy, there's a lot of talk around here, and certainly at the Amex, as we both know, about winning a trophy. I'm going to ask you this, finally. It's my final question. If the Albion could win a trophy in the next 5 years, which would it be? Which would you pick?
Having done the European tour, it's got to be Champions League, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, if you want to go straight in at the top, by all means.
Because, and thinking that through, it's two reasons. One, we'll have finished in the top 4/5, so that would be a successful season. I've thought about this many times, obviously, in my life. And then, secondly, I think Paul and Tony would be hugely thankful for the windfall of cash that would give us. So, and hopefully that would also, obviously that means that we then get the Champions League the following season as well.
I like your style. A lot of people would have said the Carabao Cup, and you say Champions League.
If you're going to aim, you aim high, surely.
Okay, we'll park the Champions League one, Dean, for a little while. But you're in the best seat in the house there, because you're watching all the players stream through to the canteen for their very healthy lunch. So you can see how well they look and how good they are. So if you're going to confine it to this season, narrow your horizons a little bit, what would you like to see from this team in 2025-26?
If I'm being greedy, and I will be greedy, I want top 8 somewhere. And of course I want a cup. I'm desperate to see us win something. And also not just for me, for the whole fan base. That would be great.
Thank you, Dean. I'm really glad you came in today. And we should say that if anybody's been affected by any of the issues discussed in this podcast, please reach out to Samaritans, call 116 123. And thanks, as ever, for listening.
Thank you.